Hello everyone and welcome to Ocean Cadence. In our video today, we'll be explaining the overhaul procedure for an auxiliary engine fuel injector and also helping you to understand the different troubleshooting aspects for such an auxiliary engine fuel injector. Also, please keep in mind this video is in continuation to an already existing video on our channel which describes the working principle and the basic construction and the parts of the fuel injector used for an auxiliary engine. So let us now proceed with the overhauling procedure. To carry out the overhauling procedure, you first need to remove the fuel injector from the place, that is while it is mounted on an auxiliary engine, and then bring it to the workshop. To carry out this removal process, you have to make sure that the auxiliary engine is properly isolated by cutting off the fuel supply and venting the fuel line, and also by making sure that the engine is not on standby, properly isolated, and manually stopping the lube oil circulation circuit for the engine. Once everything is done, you can safely remove the pipes, that is the connection pipes for the fuel inlet outlet and also the high pressure pipe leading from the pump into the injector. Remove the metal inlet pipe which runs through into the injector and then thereby remove the injector from the top with the help of the injector withdrawal tool. These tools look mostly like a three-legged or a two-legged jacking tool and would have different through and through bolts and nuts for the jacking of the injector and one centrally aligned similar nut and bolt for the holding of the injector. And once you use this tool and properly jack the injector, it will come out from its place and you can then carry it to the place of dismantling. Once you have brought it to the workshop, then make sure to use either the designated bench for overhaul, or if you do not have one, then make sure that we use soft brass plates while gripping the injector on the makeshift bench vices to make sure that the injector body is not damaged. Now, before doing any overhauling or dismantling, you have to make sure that the internal parts of the injector are not in pressurized condition. That means the spring is not pressurized. So depending upon the design, for example, some injectors such as the Daihatsu generator injectors might have a top tightening or the top compression from where a top screw is the one which is pressurizing the spring. So you'll have to slacken this, or for instance, the one explained in our previous video where we have a compression nut and a locking nut, you'll have to loosen it to make sure that the injector's internals are not in a compressed state. What will happen is that if you do not remove this compression force and straight away unlock your cap nut, then it might lead to accidents and also to damage within the internal and the external side of the injector. So once you have done this and ensure that everything is in order, you can then proceed on inverting the injector and loosening the cap nut. Please make sure that you remember that this cap nut is tightened with the help of a torque spanner. So the force required would be quite a lot and you need to have the designated tools in place to carry out this cap nut slackening. This is to ensure that we do not damage the threads on the body of the injector and also the internal threads on the cap nut. After doing this, once we have removed the cap nut, we can then thereby carefully withdraw the nozzle and take it out. This obviously will come out with the needle. So while doing this process, you can also check the initial movement of the needle. This will help you to understand whether the needle was already seized or not, or whether it was already in a dilapidated state or not, and also help you to keep an understanding of the initial condition of your injector. And then thereby moving forward, you can remove the spacer, the spring retainer and the spring. While removing the spring, you can check for any fatigue and also the wear marks on the spring, and also compare the length of the spring with a new spring to make sure that it is within the stipulated percentage decrease in free length for usage. And if you want to get a gauge of how much change in the free length of the spring is allowed, you can refer to the manufacturer's manual, because this is again dependent hugely on the specific maker's design. Once you have done the job so far, you can thereby go and proceed to remove the spring carrier, the washer, the pressure adjusting nut and the lock nut. Once all of these are out, you can remove the locating pins as well. please make sure to keep the nozzle and the needle as a pair, and with careful cleaning only with the designated chemical or the cleaning agent. After that, you'll have to keep it properly packed up in a zip wrapper and keep it safely so that no external damage or dirt ingress is carried into the space. Other parts of the injector can thereby be cleaned by dipping them in diesel and using the other cleaning agents as designated correctly, and we have to make sure that no excessive scrubbing is carried out. All the wear and all the abrasive particles are correctly removed. All the rust, dust and the sludge contamination, if any, on the surface is clearly removed, and we have to inspect the surface of the injector's body where the nozzle seats. By inspecting this, what will make sure that there is no relative leak between the top surface and the nozzle, because as we know that under the state of working, when the compressive forces are acting and the pressure of the fuel is high, it can have an ability to escape even through the minor metal to metal contact spots, and if these surfaces are not matching with a proper metal finish, and if there is anywhere, the fuel might leak and carry over from the leak off line, and this will then give you alarms and also cause malfunctioning in your injector. So make sure to do this very carefully. Also remember that the modern day needle and nozzle pairs are not allowed to be labbed. So if you have any leaks, or let's say the inefficiency beyond a certain mark, you'll have to replace the needle and the nozzle as a pair and send the affected one for reconditioning to the workshops. This is very important to understand, because if you are lapping a nozzle and needle pair which is not supposed to be, you are inadvertently causing wear which otherwise would not have been caused, and at the end of the day your injector is going to malfunction when you put it in the spot. So it would waste your time, effort and reduce the efficiency of the engine. Once everything has been carried out, the box back would be carried out in the reverse process, and before doing all these things, that is the box up part, you'll also have to check the relative movement of the needle within the nozzle. So what happens is, if you hold the nozzle and if you let the needle move by itself, that is vertically downwards, the movement should be free, but it should not slide instantaneously. This will give an impression that vacuum is being created through the pocket that which it is moving, which means that the relative sealing between the needle and the nozzle and the surface is proper. What again that means is your injector will not leak when you put it in place. During the box back, once you have put the pressure adjusting nut and the lock nut, that is the external aperture, and after that, once you have put the spring carrier inside and thereby the spring, the retainer and the spacer, then you will very carefully couple and place the needle and the nozzle on the top surface. Make sure everything is aligned perfectly, that is the atomization holes are aligned perfectly for the nozzle side, and then make sure to put the cap nut in the proper vertical spacing so that the threads do not mismatch, even though the threads are more or less self-aligning, but we do not want any kind of wear to be caused. And then once you have put the cap nut in place, then carry out the proper tightening procedure with the help of the torque tightening ranges mentioned for the design. Once everything is done, you can then thereby proceed for the pressure testing of the injector before you put it into action, and this step is mandatory to understand two things. First of all, your injector is working properly or not, and the second thing, adjusting the working range of your injector. So for example, at what pressure is it getting triggered, at what pressure is the injection taking place, the pattern of injection and all these aspects, which we'll be covering later on in a separate video. It is also important to understand from the troubleshooting aspect that not every time do you need to wait for the desired PMS mark or the running hours to open or overhaul your injector. If your alternator, that is if your auxiliary engine is giving any problem with respect to the fuel side, you can identify it and thereby subject your injector to overhaul. Now, the most common symptoms that you will see is, for example, the exhaust temperature for a particular unit would be high, and this would be checked on the individual temperature gauge. So for this, you can understand that the initial adjusting of the pressure of the injector is too high. That is why you can see the peak pressure might also be going too high. Similarly, if your peak pressures are going low, then the pressure setting can be low, and this can be leading to a mistiming of the combustion. If you see black smoke, you can also suspect dripping injector, and this again would have a dribbling effect or give you lower peak pressures, and you can correlate it for a particular unit. And if you have already removed the injector and you see metal wear, brown slag or blackish excessive deposit on the internals of the injector, you can suspect that the injector was getting overheated, which means the circulation of the fuel is not proper, and somewhere the line leading to the injector might be choked or not properly aligned, and this can later on also lead your injector to being seized. As you must have understood until now, that for observing all these things, it is very important to take periodic performance records of your generator. That is, measure the peak pressure and all the aspects and check the different operational temperatures and pressures. So it will give you a closer understanding of how the basic elements of your generator are working. I hope this video helps you to understand in detail the working of an auxiliary engine's fuel injector and also how we are carrying out the overhaul step by step. As already detailed earlier, we'll be covering in another video about the pressure testing and the process of pressure testing for the fuel injector. Make sure to like the video and subscribe to our channel and share it with your friends and colleagues and help us spread the word of mouth. Thank you.